Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, Jennifer. I'm glad we ended up in the right place, you and I. Okay, so I'm going to start off, like we always do, with any questions that you might have about assignments or anything like that. So we talked a lot last week about the case study that I assigned you that's actually due Sunday, August the 4th. So any additional questions about that particular assignment? Everybody's got it? We're good? Woohoo! Yeah, a few of you have already turned it in, and I graded several today. I'll continue grading the rest of the week, but yeah, it's looking really good. And to those of you that chose to do every single tool, 3 points added to your final grade seems like a very small reward from the amount of time I'm sure you spent on it. But hopefully you found it helpful and maybe something you might want to use or adapt into the future. Okay. So let me go ahead and let's talk for just a second about your case study midterm. It was assigned this week. It's not actually due until the 18th of August. But remember, don't let things snowball on you guys, because we're coming up on the end of the course, and it's just going to be a lot. So, try to get this done and knocked out of the way, especially for those of you I know that are going back to school here really soon. So, questions about this? There's 2 pieces to it. As you know, I'm going to try to share this with you here. Hang on, let me do share screen real quick. Okay, so I've given you an example of how, sorry, why is it not enabling editing? There we go. So this is an example, but you're going to complete a self-evaluation form based on your school. For those of you that maybe aren't working in a school right now or you don't have access to this information, you are more than welcome to just email me and I will send you a data set to use. Hopefully it's not too hard. It's really pretty simple, but, what is your self-evaluation? So, simple demographic information you should have available. And then some questions. Now, again, guys, there's not a right answer because I don't know your school. You may tell me that it's the best thing ever and it's really a terrible school. I'm not going to double check or anything like that. But what I want you to do is to think this through. And what are those points that if you were going to publish this on your website or you were going to give it to your superintendent or the school board, what are those points you want them to know? So thinking about your school, what is distinctive? How effective is your school? How do you know? What are the strengths? And like I said, they're not hard questions, but I want you to spend some time being thoughtful and being thorough. So for anything that you tell me is a strength, you've got to be able to tell me how you know that it's a strength. So what are your areas for improvement? And I think we've talked about this, but remember, it's really easy to get caught in that mode of when you're talking about improvements to have a laundry list. I could tell you 20 things right off the top of my head that I think we should do to improve LSUS. But giving somebody a list of 20 things is not productive, it's not helpful, and it's also not manageable. So no more than 3 areas for improvement. And try to choose those that you think are the most impactful, and probably something that you can actually accomplish within a year. So, if it's that you want to go on this huge capital campaign and you want to build a new facility and all that, that's probably not something you're going to do in a year. So I may not put that in as my main area for improvement. But you're going to go through and complete this. And it's, how many pages I'm trying to see here? It is 17 pages long. So it's not, it's not something you're going to sit down and do maybe in an hour or 2. It's going to take you a little bit of time. But once you do it, hopefully you have a pretty good feel for what is going on. So let me get out of this real quick and I'll actually open up the template. Maybe. There it goes. Okay, so here's the actual template and you're just going to fill it in. If you don't have access to something, you can put not applicable. But don't put it for things that require a lot of narrative, okay? So for those of you that maybe don't have, like I said, a school and you need me to send your data, you're going to have to try to figure out from the data what maybe makes a school distinctive, but if you struggle with that, just let me know and I'll kind of walk you through it. Okay? All right. Questions?
Question.
Yes.
Can, like, for example, since I don't have a school right now, can I kind of like mix the data with like what my school last year was doing?
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
combine that information and then, pretend like this data is for my school, but then like put in the information from the systems and the routines that my school did last year?
Yeah, Olivia, I think that's a great idea. That would be a wonderful way to approach it if you don't have a specific school and you're using my data set. The only thing I would caution you about is make sure you look at the data so that there's not conflicting information. So like if one thing your school was last year was great at, you guys were recognized at the national level for outstanding mathematics, but the data set that I send you shows that, you guys are low performing in mathematics. So just kind of watch for those kind of weird anomalies.
Yeah, my school's similar to what the data set kind of showed, just without some things. So I just thought maybe I could like combine that information and kind of make it into like an imaginary school.
Yeah, and also too, the data sets, if you don't want to do that, another option might be the data sets that I'm sending you are from actual schools. So you can always do a Google search on the school, and probably just from reading their website and information, you might be able to also find out and answer these questions.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, either one is fine. That's perfect. Good question.
I have a quick question too. So at the very end, it says, guidance on completing this form. So I feel like those are just directions. But at the very last thing on page 17, it says, what approach should we take? That's a question that we have to answer?
No, not necessarily. It talks about here, if you're, hopefully you guys can still see this, that what approach, it's basically just telling you schools have different approaches. It's done sometimes by the leadership team. Others have done it in faculty meeting, whatever. The only thing to add there, you don't have to do anything. I'm not going to count off if you don't. But if you have a better idea, that you think this should be done by a committee made up of students, parents, faculty, staff, administrators, that kind of thing. Just if you have something that's, kind of different or unique, you might want to put it there.
Gotcha. And this is the only document we will be turning in for this case study?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And I've reached out to, I didn't know all the stuff about it, like our SPED department and numbers of 504 plans and all that. So I'm hoping they get back to me, but if they don't, I'll put NA.
Yeah, and if you don't have it, like I said, just put NA. But, for me, that would be a question that I would probably want to know when I went back to school, with my principal and say, maybe this might be helpful that we knew as a school. Because I know one thing that, like at my last school where I was principal, we had a very small special ed number, but we had a ridiculously high 504 number. And it was kind of shocking, and I didn't really think too much of it until one of my teachers, we shared this data and all that. And one of my teachers, kind of pointed out, we started digging. And, students in high school who are on 504 plans can get extended time on the SAT and the ACT. So some of my more well-to-do parents were taking their children to their doctors to get diagnosed with something that qualified them for a 504 so they could get more time on the SAT and the ACT. So it became a game. So like I said, sometimes that data may seem pretty innocuous until you really start looking at it. So we had to take some steps and built in some policies regarding 504 plans that you couldn't just get at your senior year. If you needed 504 accommodations, short of being, some disaster, like you're in a car wreck or something and you needed, time to get back and forth to class because you were in crutches. But you had to have been on a 504 plan since the beginning of your high school career with us. So, like I said, if you don't have it, it just for me kind of raises a flag about, why don't we know that? And if we don't know it, is it important to maybe find out either why we don't, or maybe there's something in the data that's telling.
Gotcha. This one's way easier, so I was so excited.
Yeah, this one's not too hard. It's not like the last one. Okay, any other questions, guys, about the assignments and moving forward? Let me go back to Moodle here. Just one second.
I had a question.
Yes.
I I didn't get a chance. I didn't see the Louisiana middle school data that you sent. I just saw Texas.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what, I've had some weird stuff happening in Moodle, DeMarcus. I don't know what it is, but like stuff disappears. It's like tonight's presentation, I put it up last week, and I went to look at it and download it today so I'd have it quick, and it was gone. So just email me if you need the Louisiana data, and I'll email it directly to you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, guys?
I thought you said on the last Zoom meeting that you removed the Louisiana data because it was too ambiguous.
Yeah, I did. There were two pieces to it. I left one part up that was a little more specific, but the part that was just like too global, you couldn't do anything with it, I did remove that. Thank you, Catherine, for reminding us of that.
Also, with the Zoom meeting links, what I noticed is that we can't click directly from the list in Moodle, but if we do the click, like we go to week 4, for example, and then click through each thing on the bottom tabs, then it will go to it instead.
Okay.
Because if we click directly, like the Zoom link from the list,
right.
All it does is show the PowerPoint.
Huh, okay. When I send it out to you in an announcement, like I try to do every day of the meeting, do those links work then, or do you have to do the same thing, scroll to the bottom?
No, those links work.
Okay, I don't know, that's weird because it's the exact same information. So it must be something in the way that Moodle has configured this. So I'll get our techie people to look at it. Thank you. I didn't realize that was happening.
Yeah, I was having that too. That's why I asked you for the links. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to, guys, that because like today my day got away from me. We've had lots going on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like almost 3 o'clock, and I haven't sent y'all a reminder about tonight. So just somebody shoot me an email or a text or something, and just say, hey, will you send a reminder? Okay.
Also, I don't know if it's a thing that you can do, but is there, when we like the email link to the forums, because my email was like blown up with everybody's responses, and we're seeing them already, but it's crazy.
Yeah, there is a way. So let me show you it's going to look different for me, okay? Because, I have an edit feature that you guys don't have. But let me show you, like in the instructor virtual office.
Well, I did go to that and try to and it didn't give me an option. It
really?
Wasn't in the drop down.
Okay, so let me see here. And like I said, again, mine's going to look different. So maybe it may be something that I messed up, which is entirely possible. So let me look at discussion locking. Nope, subscription. See, I've got it as optional. So when it's optional, you can opt in or opt out. Now I can change it to a forced subscription where you don't have a choice. I can do it auto, where it automatically makes you do it. It's kind of like forced, or I can disable it completely, but it's on optional. So I'm not really sure why. Yeah, I'm not locking the discussions. I'm not blocking anything. So yeah, I don't know, Catherine, honestly. I'm not sure at all what might be going on with that. Now in the news forums, let me look. I don't think it gives me options. I think it's just an automatic thing, but let me double check and make sure. Edit settings, sorry.
I could be thinking of the other class, but one of the classes just totally blew up my email.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll double check in 700 as well and see if maybe I accidentally put that one as forced as opposed to optional.
I have over 2,000 emails.
I can relate. Yeah, because every time you guys do anything in Moodle, I get an email. So yeah, I'll be like right now I have 3 emails in my inbox. I promise you, by the time we finish and 9 o'clock tonight, I will have probably 1,000. So yeah, I feel your pain. But yeah, I will definitely see if I can figure out a way if I screwed that up, because I probably did. Moodle hates me most days. Okay, anything else, guys? Assignment questions? We're more than halfway there. Okay, let's go ahead and start talking about our stuff tonight. And this is actually pretty quick. Oh shoot, hang on. I always do this with this thing. Okay, so we might actually finish early. I know we heartbroken. Okay, so we are going to talk about, and can you guys, sorry, there we go. Can y'all see the PowerPoint okay? Thumbs up, we good? Okay, so we've been talking an awful lot about data and different data models and how important data is and all those kind of things. And, you know, we've talked a lot about, too, that we tend to give teachers way more data than they can possibly use or absorb. And how do you actually put that into action? Because all the data in the world is not going to help you if it just is put in a binder on a shelf and gathers dust and we don't do anything with it. But at the same time, we tend to give you so much data that it's unmanageable. So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about what it really means to do true data analysis. And there's a lot of misunderstandings out there about data. So basically the whole idea is we start with data. It gives us information, which leads to knowledge, which should lead to action and instruction. So in a very simple way. So data-driven schools. How many of you are working in a school that would describe itself as data-driven? Okay, some of you kind of like, yeah, some of you definitely yes. I see Olivia's like, yes. Catherine's like, no. It has become the catchphrase. It's sort of like people will say they're doing PLCs and they're really not doing PLCs. It's a faculty meeting. You know, it's by no means an actual PLC. A lot of schools describe themselves as data-driven when that is not true. A lot of schools don't do data at all, or if they do, they misuse it and abuse it. So we want to talk about really what it means to be a true data-driven school and how impactful that can be on student achievement, as well as how it can inform teaching. Because at the end of the day, we can take all this big data, but if it's not used to inform instruction or to maybe change instruction, then, like I said, it's all for nothing. So data is a way, as we all know, that we can look at and express ideas or information in numbers or quantifiable ways. You know, we've all gotten pretty good at understanding that element thanks to the accountability movement that is thriving in our country. But really, the truth of the matter is, yes, it's important to know our data, but the most powerful data is the data that is generated at the classroom level with the teacher. It's not the state data, it's not even the school data. Sometimes grade level data can be impactful, but like I said, it's really most impactful when we are able to drill that data down to individual teachers and individual students. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy out there about pay for performance and all those kind of things and teachers being paid based on test scores. You know, I got to do all of that fun stuff in Dallas and, you know, the jury's still out about whether or not that was a good idea. But at the end of the day, if we're going to move a student and, you know, really look at their progress and growth, it has to be happening at the teacher level. So we're going to talk about that. Data also is not useful if we don't really understand the context in which it was taken. So I think a lot of people that, you know, are maybe not in the school systems or don't have children in our school systems, you know, we get and we attach these letter grades to our schools. And so they tend to think that that's an A school. Well, you know, I'll pick on my old friends in Dallas. So in the Dallas area, there is a suburb. It's not really a suburb. It's like it's weird. If you're familiar with Dallas, it's literally in the center of Dallas. The city of Dallas surrounds it, called Highland Park. It has one of the highest per capita incomes in the country. It is very much a bubble of very wealthy people. Highland Park is rated an A school. They are rated exemplary. They have, you know, all of these national merit scholars, and, you know, they look great. Well, to the uninformed, they're like, that's a great school system. Yeah, it should be, because 99% of the families are college educated. The median income is well over $500,000. These students have been and traveled the world. They've had every kind of learning experience from the time they're born till they go through school. If a student, is struggling, parents go out and hire private tutors. They have their students assessed. These students have everything you could possibly want, and then some, outside of the school. So all the school has to do, in my opinion, and I'm good friends with their former superintendent, is not screw it up. So of course, they better have a 100% passing rate, because there's no reason not to. Next door, you might have, as they do, another school district. I'll pick on my former district, Irving ISD. Irving, while a lot of people think Irving is like Valley Ranch and where the Cowboys are and Las Colinas and all, that's not true. That is actually the Carrollton Farmers Branch School District. The Irving School District ends right north of a particular street in North Irving. Irving ISD has the highest percentage of second language learners in the state of Texas. It has one of the highest poverty indexes in the state of Texas. It is extremely diverse from every measure you can look at: socioeconomics, race, ethnicity, experiences, all of those kind of things. Well, Irving maybe got a grade of B. So people are like, well, Irving's not as good as Highland Park. When in reality, for a district that's struggling with poverty, language acquisition, high mobility rates, all of these other things, they had to absolutely kill themselves to get a B. So data without context can create a lot of misunderstandings, particularly in our public. So that's why we have to understand the nuances and be able to provide that additional context. But everybody believes in data, it drives everything, it drives business, etc. So data-driven instruction quite simply is that you start off first by collecting your data, whatever that is. You analyze it. Once you analyze it, you make instructional decisions around that. You plan for it, and they say reflect, I say evaluate. And it is this constant cycle that we should be going through. So if we're thinking about not only data-driven schools, we also have to understand that there is a context and a need for a knowledge-driven school. So like I said, if I'm a data-driven school, and I remember as a principal vividly, Dallas just loved data, and we would go every year around this time as principals to our big back-to-school, week-long professional development, and I swear you had to bring a wagon with you, because by the time you got through the first 2 days, you had notebooks, that are 6 inches tall, full of data. It was meaningless because there was so much. I didn't have the time, nor any principal had the time, to go through and organize 90% of it. So data has to be organized. And like I said, it has to be put into a context that makes sense. It also has to be what I call transformed. What do I mean by transformed? Transformed is that you make sense of it. You change it. Now, you don't change the numbers, but you change it in the way that you use it, you massage it, etc. It has to be put into a meaningful context. So, I'm a big fan of graphs. Visuals tell the story, etc. But we also have to understand that even though I may know my data as a campus leader, I have to make sure that others know it as well. So you have to put it into that social process where it is discussed and analyzed and massaged at every level, with your administrative team, with your teachers, with your students, and even with your parents. So one of the things that we did, we had a one-page data sheet that had our scores on all the tests that mattered. So at the high school level, we did ACT, SAT, advanced placement exams, our exit level, our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade exit level graduation test. We looked at attendance, we looked at discipline. I think that was it. Oh, enrollment. Put it on a one-pager, and we had our scores and results, we had the districts, and we had the state. And then we told them whether we were above or below in every area. Simple, easy, one page, gave exactly what the parents wanted and needed. We didn't give them reams because it didn't make sense. We didn't even give our teachers reams. We broke it down. Okay? So you have to also understand, and I've said this a couple times, that we really have to move beyond just analysis. You know, there's a lot of debate out there, and I can probably argue equally well on either side of it, whether a data meeting should be done by a separate data team or if it should be done as part of a professional learning community. I think there's an argument for both, but at the end of the day, data has to be about instruction. So we have to not just do it and check it off like, oh, we analyze our data, check. You have to make sure that it is woven into the fabric of discussion and planning so that it makes its way into instruction and ultimately students know their own data and they're tracking it. Also, too, I've mentioned this before, historical data is only marginally useful. So I feel sorry for you. I'm sorry if you have to do this. I'm sorry to every teacher I ever put through this. But if you go back to school and your principal spends half a day going back through all of your end of the year state test results, yeah, it's nice to know. Maybe you get to celebrate. Maybe you get beat up. I don't know. But it's really not going to help change anything. Now, if you take those third grade results and you look at how that's going to impact fourth grade instruction, that's going to make a difference. But too often we're comparing apples and oranges. The group of third graders that took the test are not the group that's in third grade anymore. So we have to understand it's either cohort data or don't take your time to do it. It's not helpful. You know, it's best done in groups. Groupthink really helps. You know, and it's also too when there's a clear understanding of what I call the CIA triad. So if you just think in terms of a little triangle, you have curriculum, instruction, and assessment. CIA, real simple. Curriculum, instruction, and assessment. You have to know your curriculum to plan your instruction. But if you're going to effectively plan instruction, you have to know what's going to be assessed. And if I know what's being assessed, then I can better plan curriculum. So it becomes this never-ending triangle of how related those three elements are. Now, a lot of people say, if you know what's on the test, aren't you teaching to the test? No. If the test is based on what we're supposed to be teaching and what our students are supposed to be learning, then it makes perfect sense. But if we're not teaching the standards that our students are supposed to be learning, or conversely, if that assessment is not assessing what our students are supposed to be learning, there is going to be a problem. So again, if you think of a triad as like a three-legged table, if you pull one of those legs out, it collapses. So assessment can't exist without the context of curriculum and instruction. Instruction cannot exist without knowledge and understanding of the assessment and how things are tested, as well as what's in the curriculum. So it is very much an absolute synergistic relationship between the three. So for those of you that have had or are in EDL700 with me, you know I'm a Dufour, you know, I don't know what's the word, groupie. I love Dufour. I think his work's fascinating. I think it's very powerful. It's had a staying power. But Dufour says that when we do a professional learning community and we're focusing on data analysis, there's only 3 questions that we need to ask. And you can phrase these in different ways, but basically what's working, what's not working, and what are we going to do about it? Okay? Some people will say, you know, what do the students learn? What do they not learn? You know, what are we going to do to change this? Okay? So, data meetings are essential. Now, a data meeting should be no more than 60 minutes in length. I try to do mine in less than 45 minutes. But they also have to occur about every 2 to 3 weeks if it's going to be meaningful. Personally, I think data should be done as part of a professional learning community cycle. So, for example, what we used to do in my school was we had an administrative team. It was, you know, it was a big high school, so, you know, it was myself and I had 6 assistant principals, an instructional coach, a graduation coach, and my lead counselor. So we were the administrative team. So our job was, when we got these binders and binders and binders of data, was to go through and pick out the pieces that were most salient and important to teachers and to organize it in a way that made sense to them. We would even do some analysis, but really the big thing was put it into usable and understandable pieces. A lot of people ask me, why did I have my counselor on there? My counselor knew more about the SAT and the ACT than anybody else in the building. So she was an essential part of helping us to understand that. Then we would take that data and it would go to our content level at the high school. In the elementary school, we did it by grade level. Content level professional learning communities. And we gave them, just like some of you have shared with me in your forums and papers and stuff, we gave them a template. They didn't have to figure out how to organize it. We gave them the tool. We taught them the tool. We showed them how the tool was going to help them. We made sure that they understood that they could just take this tool and they could absolutely move it into their planning phase. Then, from there, they took it, and part of their PLC cycle was data meetings. Then they would do their unit plans. Then they would do their lesson plans, which included development of assessments and all of that. Then they would do, reviews of student work. We had this whole cycle for 6 weeks that each week we were focusing on a different aspect of the planning processes. It was amazing. One of the things that came out, though, that I think was most profound was we noticed two things. Number one, we were finding that consistently, no matter what test it was, whether it was a state assessment, the ACT, the SAT, even some of our teacher assessments, across grade levels and across content areas, our students were not doing well in vocabulary. We couldn't figure out why. We looked at the curriculum, it looked strong. We looked at the lesson plans. They were pretty much on target, but something was happening in instruction, so by the time they got to assessment, our students were not doing well. So as part of our PLC 6-week cycle that we had, we did what we call learning walks. So in a learning walk, it was a team led usually by an administrator of teachers who just happened to be off that period. That's all it was. And we went into classrooms to observe other teachers. And we would pick a focus. So let's say that the focus might be we're in to look at student engagement. Obviously, because we knew from our data there was a problem with vocabulary and students really mastering that, we made our first 6 weeks learning walks about vocabulary. So when we went in, we were looking at what did you observe? What was working well? What are those things that you would, think were awesome? What's something you want to use in your classroom? And then what was one area that you still have a wondering about? Kind of like an improvement, but not really. It's just I wonder why the teacher did this. Well, then we took all of that information, put it together, and we started looking at, again, at the administrative level for trends. And guess what we found? Vocabulary was throughout the curriculum. It was aligned to the state assessment. However, when my teachers were teaching vocabulary, they did this. On Monday, here's your vocabulary list. Your homework on Monday night is to define all the words. Then on Tuesday, you're going to use them in a sentence. That's your homework. And then on Wednesday, you're going to do this and this and this. And then on Friday, we have a quiz. Well, we all know what students do. They did the assignments, they memorized the words for the quiz, which was done in isolation, had no context. And guess what? When they encountered those SAT-type vocabulary words and those lists we had developed, they didn't know how to use it in an analogy like it's done on the SAT. They had no clue because we weren't asking them to define it. So we realized that if you think about, again, that curriculum instruction and assessment, the problem was instruction. In another instance, we noticed that we were having trouble with our students not doing as well as they needed to with problem solving and justifying basically a hypothesis was kind of the gist of it. And again, we did all those pieces. Instruction was great. Man, the teachers were hitting it. They were teaching it well. We had done that professional development and they'd actually learned something and they were using it in their classroom. It was awesome. We knew how it was assessed, but we couldn't figure it out. So one of my teachers, it was actually my science lead, my science department chair said, Tracy, we think we know what the problem is. We think it's a problem in the district's curriculum. And they said, do you trust us? Well, that's always a loaded question when you're a principal. But I said, yeah, of course I trust you guys. What? And they said, let us teach the curriculum the way we want to teach it. not by the book like the district says we have to. Let us take over. And they said, we promise you we'll get results. Well, you know, even though I had a policy that said we had to follow the district curriculum, we just kind of on the slide went, and they did their stuff. And guess what? Our scores shot through the roof. There was a huge gap in the district's curriculum. So when they figured out, they're like, how'd y'all get such great scores? And I'm like, well, my science department chair. Well, poor Tom then got put on the district level writing committee for curriculum. But again, you have to understand that those three elements, data is what gets you there, okay? So data meetings, whether it's in a PLC or separately, should have an agenda. It should be specific, and everybody has a role, okay? So I've given you a sample of one of our old ones. So, you know, we looked at our tier 1, we were looking at our tier 2 kids based on our data. So this was, you know, we knew which fit into each group. Let me go back here. We should also make sure that we are using a particular protocol. You know, part of the job that I wanted to do with you guys in this course was to show you multiple protocols, but I'm telling you, you can mix them and create your own, or just stick to one. Don't try to give your teachers more than one process. It'll confuse them. But for the sake of this course, I wanted you to see multiple models. It is also, as I said, something that talks about, it is very much a part of a cycle, okay? So in terms of achievement, I'm not going to read all this to you, but we know that, again, that CIA triad, which I talk about here in the 4th bullet, that we have to, as part of curriculum, understand, analyze, and unpack our standards. That's why I had you guys do that, because that drives your curriculum. But then we have to know how it is assessed on whatever instrument it is. So if you want your kids to do well on the SAT, you better teach them things like analogies, probability and statistics, etc. But you also need to make sure you're asking them from an assessment point questions in the same format as they're being tested, whether it's at the state level, a state test, a national test, or even a classroom test. Also, too, something that may come out in data is a lot of times there's a huge mismatch between the way teachers are testing students on their own classroom assessments and the way those same standards are assessed on, like I said, a state or a national test. Those should be aligned. So you have to spend time not only unpacking standards, you better spend some time understanding those assessments. When you really get into the nitty-gritty of data analysis, one of the most powerful tools that you can possibly use is most state tests will give you, let's say question number 1, the correct response was C. And let's say 50% of your students chose C. But 10% chose A, 25% chose B, 15% chose D. Well, I need to know why my students are choosing those other things. So then you have to go in and really figure out what the wrong answer was and how it tripped up your students. Then you have to go back and look at the standard. And then you got to figure out, how do I actually teach that in my classroom? So sometimes it's as simple as students maybe didn't understand a vocabulary word in the question, or that they would throw in a little trick that, you know, when you should have multiplied, they actually divided, and that kind of made sense to the kids. So all of that plays into and is a very critical part of data analysis. We talk all the time about the power of a teacher team. And, you know, specifically I talk about this really in EDL700. But, guys, data is hard when you do it by yourself. You guys have experienced that, just getting through that plan. It's hard. Now, think about how much easier that would have been if you could have done it with your team. And here, you do this piece, you do this piece, and then we're just going to kind of teach each other what we learned. So it really is ideally done in small groups. It also should be timely. So, for example, like I said, we spend a lot of time opening school talking about historical data. What you really need to be talking about is one of the schools, I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but they do like 3 checkpoints a year. So as soon as they get that checkpoint data back, they need to act on it. And that needs to be what drives their next set of planning. and data analysis. So it should be, and for example, when we did our learning walks and we realized that vocabulary was being taught badly, we did a professional development immediately on effective ways to teach vocabulary. And we chose as a school to follow Marzano's model, which completely changed how we taught it. And guess what? Achievement improved, okay? The other part of it too is, in an ideal world, you have an instructional coach, an administrator, a lead teacher, a buddy teacher, a friend, somebody who can come in and watch you teach and can literally, it's that seamless dance between you and that person where maybe they see that you're struggling a little bit and they just take over teaching for that moment and show you a new and better way to teach a particular concept. And then they step back out and you take over. So the whole idea of coaching becomes not only you and I sit down and have a conference after I've watched you teach, it's really I'm in there in the classroom with you. And I see that, gosh, this would have been a better strategy to teach that. So I'm just going to jump in and we're going to do my little strategy real quick, and then I'm going to jump back out and keep moving. It's also that opportunity for those quick formative assessments that gauge how students are doing. So, for example, one of the things that I would do frequently is I'd go in a classroom and things would be going great. Teachers on a roll, the kids are on a roll, and all that. But I noticed that, this has been going on for 30, 40 minutes, and the teacher hasn't done a check for understanding or a quick formative assessment. So how do you know if the students are really getting it or not? So at that point, I might interrupt and say, hey, guys, on a scale of 1 to 5, here's your 5 choices, show me where you are. And that's a quick check to know whether or not the kids are getting it. It can be something like a thumbs up, thumbs down. It can be, we had cups that we put on the tables, so like if you got it and you're doing great, you got a green cup up, you're just going. Maybe you put a red up because you're stuck and then you need immediate help. So that whole idea of coaching in the moment is really, really important. And these are all high yield strategies that take little to no effort. I didn't have to go plan a whole lesson around that. I just wanted to know if the kids were getting it in the moment. Okay. So you also spent some time learning about data stories and watched, hopefully you guys have all seen the video by now. But I want to just go a little bit deeper with the idea of a data story. So I'm not going to read through all this, but one of the things that you have to know about a data story is, here's your audience. So the data story I tell may be different if I'm talking to my parents versus my teachers. It might be different if I'm talking to my administrative team. But at the end, you have to give good examples that are short and simple for people to understand. And we all need to use those great PD strategies to keep people involved so it becomes interactive. So what are kind of the tips to do this? So I'm not going to do the videos, but these should be, I hope they work, hot links that you can actually go in and watch. So there's basically 6, 7 steps to having an effective data story. So number 1, lead your audience to your point. Okay. So you've got to make sure that your audience knows where you're trying to go to. So it's kind of like writing that perfect 3 or 5 paragraph essay where, the introductory paragraph tells you what you're going to tell them, and then the ending paragraph sums up what you told them. It's kind of the same idea with telling a story. Okay? It should also drive a message home. So it's not about just presenting facts. It's really about reaching a conclusion. So you have to be both informative and persuasive. So the information part, we know that's facts, but really it's selling somebody that data that they may not want, they may not care about, they may not understand, but you have to engage them as a good storyteller will, okay? So again, I've got video links if you want to see what this looks like, but I'm just not going to walk through them all tonight. So, the other thing too is that people are interesting, but numbers aren't. I mean, there's nothing worse than going to a presentation where it's chart after chart after chart. We have to make it interesting. So one of the data stories that we used, we were talking about the fact that when I was the principal of the Arts High School, we were seeing a lot of our students who were getting admitted into the art schools, but then they couldn't get the scholarship or admitted to the actual college. Because what was happening was, these were great actors, actresses, whatever, but they weren't scoring high enough academically to actually get a full ride scholarship to SMU or a full ride scholarship to NYU. Those were kind of the big ones for us. So I had to convince my teachers that this was a problem. So I told the story of Elliot. Elliot was a student. They all knew who I was talking about. I didn't have to use his last name. Elliot was a phenomenal actor. Phenomenal. I mean, like the kind that you watch and you just knew someday he's going to be rich and famous because he was that good. Give you chill bumps kind of actor. And everybody was clamoring for Elliot to go to their college, into their acting program. Well, he really wanted to go to SMU, Southern Methodist University. They had a great school of theater and acting. And they wanted him. They were going to give him a full 100% scholarship to SMU. If you're not familiar with SMU, that's worth probably at least $150,000, if not more. The problem was Elliot couldn't qualify and meet SMU's admission standards. And Elliot was only one student who fell into that category. So I was able to really engage people to look at the data around the numbers of students we had who were getting these great auditions and invites to some of the premier universities around the world because of their ability in the arts, but they couldn't go to school there because we couldn't get them through the admissions process. So it's suddenly, because it was real, we were able to make the point that we had to do a lot of things academically to boost our students up. So, you know, sometimes we go off track in the data, but again, catching them and understanding that this is a people issue, it's not just a numbers issue. They must make an impact, obviously. So, you know, Ben Wellington, I think you guys saw his, I think he has one of the most impactful data story videos out there. So he really kind of gets how to do it. So definitely make sure you spend some time watching him. We also need to understand what is the compelling part of the data. So you have to have a compelling point. Like I said, you know, it could just be numbers and numbers and numbers. But when I was able to tie our student acceptance rates into college to Elliot's story, that's what made it impactful. It was a compelling data point because not only did I have my anecdotal story, I had numbers that backed me up. Okay. Create an emotional impact. I've kind of already talked to you about that. Anytime that you can make it emotional to people, you know, kind of catch their hearts, it's going to be that much better. Okay. Think about your data in different ways. So again, you know, you can just kind of reform it, transform it, whatever you want to do. So as a leader, you have to tell the story. You've got to find a way to convince your teachers that data matters. So it's kind of like trying to sell somebody, you know, the vacuum cleaner when they do door-to-door sales. I know they don't do that anymore, y'all are too young. But, you know, if somebody comes to your door trying to sell you a vacuum cleaner that you don't want, you got to convince people that they want your vacuum cleaner and they're going to buy it. You've got to make sure that you create conditions where there is that focus around data and the instructional pieces of curriculum and instruction that need to happen. There also has to be a sense of urgency. You know, it's kind of like I'm pulling together some data for the dean right now, and it's really not my favorite thing to do. It's a lot of me just going through different research pieces and all. And, you know, it's not, like I said, it's not fun. It's not what I like to do, but there is a sense of urgency. We're under a deadline to do this. Also, too, there has to be that moral purpose. You know, and again, that's where I think data storytelling can be really powerful, in particularly. And then don't forget to celebrate that, you know, this is not fun work sometimes, but it is powerful. It's very impactful. And when you see it pay off, like I said, really, you know, take the time to celebrate and reward people for doing that. Okay, let me turn off share. So what questions do you guys have? Yeah, Olivia, I saw your comment. That just makes me so sad for you. Yeah, you spend the whole day going over data, making a plan that's not followed. I mean, that's useless.
We also had like a big chunk of days where we missed school, and we had a data day where they told us that they wanted to extend our math period at the end of our day to make up for that missed time. But they used our data to like play it off like, oh, we're just mixing this up the last 8 weeks of school because we have to make up for this 10 minutes that we've missed. And then it was just a hot mess, and that's why I didn't want to come back. So it was really fun to like do that data. I was like, this doesn't do much for my kids.
No.
I just my instincts with them.
Now we're going to talk, I think it's next week, about the real power of data is found in formative assessment. You can know more in a 2-second thumbs up, thumbs down in a classroom with kids about where they are than you might find after doing a whole day of data analysis.
Yeah, it was like it was just really frustrating to just sit there and waste a whole day where my kids could have been learning instead, you know.
Yeah, exactly. We always did our data meetings. We created our schedules so that we had a common planning period. So, you know, in Texas, there's rules about you have to have so many minutes for planning and all that. So we kind of rearranged our schedule, and we were able to give everybody 2 off periods, you know, every day. And so one was their personal planning period. That was sacred time as mandated by the state of Texas. But the other was, it was automatic collaboration. You were either in your PLC or, you know, we had different things, you know, each day so that we could plan together. And we talked about, we did that a couple of years, and, you know, things were going great. Our results looked really good. We got some national awards. Things were really happening for us. And we started thinking, gosh, do we really need that? And, you know, that's stupid administrators that don't really understand things sometimes. And when the teachers heard we were talking about taking away that collaborative planning period, I mean, they revolted. They're like, no, we have to have that. That's so important. So, you know, I personally believe don't ask teachers as much as possible to do things before or after school, because before school you're trying to get ready for your day. And at the end of the day, if you've taught like you should be teaching, you're exhausted. And so we always tried to build everything in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, we lost instructional time, but the planning that came out of that more than made up for.
I would have rather have done that than spend a whole day sitting in my classroom doing a plan that wouldn't have been followed through, and it wasn't held to the standard that I should have thought it was. So
yeah,
urban education in Milwaukee it's very interesting.
There's a lot of places that's how I would describe it. Anybody else want to share? Oh, Richard, I'm sorry, that's your Monday PD schedule. Yeah, it's interesting too, DeMarcus, what you said about if we'd switched the 2 school districts. Texas has moved, not completely, but they're looking more at growth data. And guess what? Dallas ISD and Irving ISD, both, who are very, like I said, you know, every at-risk indicator that you can think of, they have, you know, like off the charts kind of thing. Their growth data, they are way outperforming Highland Park. Way outperforming, because they're doing things like taking kids who are in 5th grade but are reading at a 2nd grade level, and by the end of 5th grade they're now reading at a 4th grade level. They quote failed the state assessment, but they grew 2 years in terms of their growth achievement. So, you know, I think there is some hope about, you know, us moving more towards a growth model maybe in the future. I think that makes way more sense than the absolute of every child will be at this level on this day when we give the stupid test. Oh, I like that. That's cool, Melissa. Will you say out loud to everybody what you typed?
At our district, and Jennifer Green, she works in the district too, so she knows, we have parent learning walks, so parents can go through and see what's being taught, and they do it for new teachers, they do it for a lot of teachers that get selected each year. They also do an administrator group where central office staff and principals, and it's not like when I did it my first year, I didn't just go to, I'm elementary, I didn't just go to elementary, I went to a couple of elementaries in the district that weren't mine. I went to middle school and to high school to actually see, you know, what it was, how classes were set up throughout the district. So, but they do that a couple of times a year. So it's they really keep up with that in our district.
That's awesome. Where are you at?
St. Charles Parish.
I'm sorry?
St. Charles Parish.
Oh, okay, St. Charles Parish. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. We did something kind of similar in that we had what were called principal partners. So yeah, we were put into groups of 3 or 4, and yeah, we all had to go to each other's schools and observe instruction and do learning walks. We also had to observe PLCs. And again, it's not evaluative, it's just to kind of see ideas and share and, be like, gosh, that was a great idea that y'all did. We're going to steal it, that kind of stuff. I'd never thought about parent learning walks, so that's a great idea.
It is. And then like curriculum it's usually like the administrators, it's about 10 of them. So it's usually like the head of secondary, elementary, curriculum and instruction principals. So that way they can go and then they collaborate and say, oh, well, we saw this working at this school, and then they'll bring it back to the principals to share throughout the district. So it's a great way to collaborate.
Yeah.
And get stuff out throughout the district.
I love that. That's like I said, I think that you guys closed the loop in a way that I had never thought of. That's a great idea. One of the things too, guys, that we always ask, because we did the same thing too, we would have multiple layer teams, with, like you said, curriculum people, principal supervisor, central office, even our superintendent. He went every Wednesday to schools, with different teams. It was pretty amazing, especially considering we had 240 schools. But we always ask students, 3 questions. What are you learning? Why are you learning this? How do you know if you've learned it? And if the kids could answer those 3 questions, we felt pretty confident that things were working. But, sometimes they didn't. They weren't able to do that. And so it's kind of like, okay, we got to dig a little deeper. What's going on here? Yeah, Jennifer, you want to share what you just said too? In the chat?
Yeah, and it's not really data related, but on those learning walks that Melissa was talking about, they also will invite representatives of like community leaders and then some of the local businesses. We get some grants. So sometimes they'll invite some representatives so that they can actually go in the schools too and see the learning that's taking place. And it really helps build that relationship with the stakeholders.
Yeah, again, great idea. Now, we did do that. We actually partnered with the Chamber of Commerce. And what was kind of cool is we did a dual learning walk. So, they would come, people from the Chamber would come to my school and we'd do these learning walks. But then I got to go to their business with my leadership team and kind of see how they did things. So it was really kind of cool. I was paired with the CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank there in Dallas. And it was fascinating. I learned important things like that they have snipers posted on the top of the building at all times because it is a Federal Reserve building and stuff. But yeah, we did that. But yeah, I think that's really critical. It's awesome. Good. Somebody wants to know, Melissa and Jennifer, what level schools are you guys at?
I'm 6th grade science.
Oh, okay. Melissa?
And I've had children who have been in the school system for a long time, but when I went on that day-long learning walk, I learned so much that I didn't even know about the school system. And we have a satellite center where they do a lot of different skills-based classes. And so all the students from the culinary program cooked lunch for us. And so we got to learn about that program. So it really helped us too, so that we could share with our students, okay, here's some of the things that the school system has to offer as you advance in the school system.
That's awesome. What a great way to build that collaborative collegiality of, we're all part of the system together. Melissa, what grade level are you at?
I'm 1st grade special ed. I've also done 2nd grade special ed, but same thing. Jennifer and I, our girls they go to the same schools. 2 of them are in the same grade. So, we've got girls in elementary and in middle school. So we've seen it go through the system too, not only as educators, but also as parents too. So I cannot complain. I moved here for the district, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and as a parent, just think how much more comfortable you're going to feel now when your kids go to high school, knowing kind of what they're walking into. That's awesome. That is really awesome. So, Melissa, they want to know, how do you guys decide which parents get to participate in the learning walks?
I think parents can sign up for it. Isn't that right, Jennifer? I think they can request, they send out
They, the administrators pick which teachers are going to go, and I think it's limited to 1 or 2 per school. But as far as parents, they send out, I'm pretty sure it's just an open invitation. Now they have to RSVP, and there's only so many spots so that they don't have a group of 200 people. But it's open to anybody.
I love that. I'm gonna do some research on St. Charles Parish now. I want to see some of their plans. That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you've got a really progressive, forward-thinking district. That's awesome. And guys, I know we're a little bit over time, but just to kind of keep in mind, and then we'll finish up. Data can come from anywhere. And the learning walks that Melissa and Jennifer have been talking about, those are great data points. Because that's the only way you're going to know if instruction is working or not, is to go in the classroom. Because what I write on paper may be completely in a lesson plan. That's why I've never been one to review teacher lesson plans. I've seen the best teachers in the world had no plans at all, and I've seen some of the worst teachers in the world that had what looked like the perfect prototype of a lesson plan. Data around instruction happens when you observe. And so I want to know what the parents, I'd want to know what the parents see, what the teachers are seeing. And again, it's not evaluative. It's just so we kind of get a feel for what's going on. And are we doing what we need to do across levels horizontally? So between the elementary and middle and high school, across grade levels. So you look at 6th grade and 3 different elementary schools, etc. Very, very important. Okay. Any other questions or comments, guys? Like I said, I apologize. We've gone a few minutes over tonight. Okay, well, we have 2 more Zoom meetings next week and the week after. And then just a quick reminder, modules 5 and 6 are fully open. I pulled them up and opened them today. And I will more than likely open up the final exam probably sometime during week 6. But don't freak out. It's not like some of the assignments I've made you do throughout the course. So I promise you.
I looked in Mod 6 and it says there's no discussion and no essay for this week. So you're going to put it in there, just not yet. Is that what you're saying?
No. There is no discussion and no reflection. Because I want you to have extra time to work on your case study and all that kind of stuff that was assigned in week 5. So yeah, I try to take it a little easy on you. Okay, any other questions, guys, before I close this out? Okay, well, I'm going to stop recording.